How's it going, folks? And welcome back to another one of my top 5 videos here on YouTube. As someone who plays largely historic as his format of choice on Arena, a question I get asked a lot is, Jeff, what's the best way to get into historic when I'm growing my collection? What pack should I be focusing on? So, to answer the first question, the best way to get into historic on Arena is with your credit card. That being said, even once you have money to spend or free to play currency that you farmed up, there's a ton of sets in historic. So today's video, I'm going to go through what I think are the 5 best sets for you to invest your resources into to get the most historic staples out of, as well as highlighting what staples in each of those sets I think are most important for the format, so you can kind of know when you have most of a set and are ready to move on to the next. So coming in at number 5 on my list of sets that you should focus on for growing your historic collection is Throne of Eldraine. So Eldraine has a number of format staples that are a mixture of both mythics and rares. We have things like Questing Beast that you see in Brawl, Ember Cleave, probably the best aggro finisher in the format. Great Henge, you see play in things like Green-White Company and Mono Green Stompy decks. The various adventure creatures are just good value or tempo, so they see play in a huge variety of things like Brazen Borrower, Bone Crusher Giant, things like Lovestruck Beast as well. Lands are very important in historic. A lot of the cards you're going to hear me talk about from all of these sets are your lands. You can't play Magic consistently without functional mana bases, and while Eldraine doesn't have dual lands in it, the castle cycle from this set all pretty much see varying amounts of play in mid-range and control decks such as Ardenvale, Locthwain, and then the other various color castles. Gilded Goose is currently our second best 1 mana accelerant in the format behind Land War Elves. So if you're playing any green deck that's interested in playing ahead of curve, usually you'll be playing some copies of Gilded Goose. We also have some miscellaneous good sideboard cards like Sorcerer Spyglass that can slot into a variety of things and turn off things like opposing planeswalkers or utility lands. There's also a few more corner case niche cards such as things like Iron Crag Feet that go into things like Big Red or other memes, and then things like Yorvo, Lord of Garenberg here, that show up in things like Mono Green Stompy. Coming in at number 4 on the top sets you should focus on for growing your historic collection is Strix Haven. So Strix Haven, obviously, really good value packs in general when you're starting out, especially because they have not only the cards in the actual set that see play in historic, but they also have all of these mystical archives, things like Memory Lapse, Lightning Helix, Inquisition of Kozilek. Honestly, the number of staples from these archives just goes on and on and on, seeing, main deck play, cornerstones of entire archetypes like Time Warp, hand smoothing and deck smoothing for things like Abundant Growth and Brainstorm, and Faithless Looting. Also see things like good removal, like Doomblade, and other cheeky utility cards like Ephemerate. Past just the archives, though, there's also a lot of really good cards inside of Strixhaven proper. So, like, Velocomist is the headliner of various combo decks in the format. Elite Spellbinder, easily in contention for one of the best disruptive creatures in the format. Leonin Lightscribe and Sedgemorewitch see play in some fringe Magecraft decks. Magma Opus sees play in Jeskai control variations as well as Jeskai Flash. All 5 of the commands see some small amounts of play, with Prismari command being the most popular of these, and Silverquill command following behind in some more specific niche decks. And there's also good just removal in this set as well at rare, with things like Baleful Mastery being pretty flexible and Vanishing Verse helping you clean up problem permanence. Also worth mentioning in Strixhaven, if you're going to be opening it, is that while the Snarls specifically I wouldn't rate super highly in the best lands in the format, they're definitely better than not having dual lands in general. So when you're just getting started out building your correct collection, the Snarls are perfectly fine budget lands that are still going to help you cast your spells consistently, even if they come into play tapped just a little bit more often than some of the more powerful dual land sets in the format will provide. Speaking of lands, coming in at number 3 in my top sets for historic is Zendikar Rising, in large part because of the lands that it contains. So the modal double-faced cards are just very powerful in Historic in general. Shatter Skull smashing, the mythic bolt lands that you pay 3 life to put them into play untapped specifically tend to be very good because they're untapped utility lands. Egdom's Awakening, Shatter Skull see a lot of play. Amaria's Call a little bit less, and Seagate Restoration a little bit less, but they do still see some amounts of play, as well as things like Turn Timber Symbiosis. Speaking of lands, Zendikar Rising is excellent because it doesn't just have 5 dual lands in it, it actually has 6. So there are 6 pathways in this set. So we have Branch Loft, which is the green-white dual land, Clearwater, which is the blue-black, Bright Climb, which is the black-white, red-white, as well as blue-red. So pathways I'd actually rank pretty highly in terms of the best dual land sets in Historic. While I wouldn't say they're the absolute best, they're definitely always untapped fixing, which is great, and you're probably going to end up playing these in most 3-color decks. You're definitely going to want to play whatever pathways are in your 2-color decks that you're playing in this format. Past pathways and the bolt lands, we also have various rare tapped utility lands such as Glasspool Mimic and Kazandu Mammoth here, which are just excellent playable cards that also happen to be lands, can help smooth out how often you're hitting your land drops. And there's good utility things in this format, like Archon of Emeria has seen play as both a sideboard hate card in various sideboards for things like playing against the Arclight Phoenix deck, and also sees main deck play in things like Green-White Company very nicely. There's also a ton of just miscellaneous other format staples in Zendikar, and honestly, I was kind of surprised how many there were in here when I was going through the list. So Crawling Barrens sees some amount of play as probably being one of the better creature lands in the format right now for control decks. Lotus Cobra pops up in ramp decks here and there. Luminarch Aspirant headlines things like White Weenie aggro, as well as the Green-White Company deck that we've mentioned a couple of times. Maul of the Skyclaves is a card that I've been impressed with in white aggressive decks. Roiling Vortex sees sideboard play in a number of things, not only because it dings your opponent if they're doing something like Merchant Ultimatum, but also it can stop them from gaining life if you're playing an aggressive deck and you care about your opponent gaining life. Skyclave Apparition here, as soon as my Scryfall page reloads, is a format staple. Shadow's Verdict here. While I think this card has gone down a little bit since the Jund Sacrifice and Company decks have fallen off, I do think this is still one of the better sweepers in the format. Being able to exile Planeswalkers as well as clean out the graveyard gives it added utility that some of the other sweepers don't have. Skyclave Shade, good resilient aggressive threat, sees play in mono black aggro. And then speaking of sacrifice decks, this is again fallen off a little bit as a staple, but if you care about the sacrifice matchups, or if you just want to hit land drops consistently, this has been a very reasonable body. There's my Skyclave Apparition. So this card is a multi-format all-star, honestly. It even sees play in formats larger than Historic, but excellent in Historic as well. Just answers problem permanence permanently. Very flexible card that you can play in your main deck. Coming in at number 2 for the top sets that you should be purchasing for Historic staples. I kind of have a twofer for number 2 here. So I'm going to lump Ravnica Allegiance and Guilds of Ravnica kind of into one here because of these cards. Blood Crypt, Breeding Pool, Godless Shrine, Hallowed Fountain, all of these shocklands. These are objectively the best dual lands that we have in Historic. And if you want to be growing your Historic collection in order to play a range of deck lists, having 40 shocks is not optional. Basically, every 2-color deck is guaranteed to play 4 copies of its shockland. And honestly, most 3-color decks want 3 to 4 copies of all of the shocklands in their color combination. So your decks that you have access to playing consistently will expand a good deal if you're able to get all 40 shocklands together, 4 copies of each of these 10 cards. Past just the lands, though, there's also a lot of other miscellaneous rares and mythics in Ravnica, Allegiance and Guilds of Ravnica that see play in Historic. Pelt Collector and Gruul Spellbreaker are both cards that see play in Gruul aggro. Cindervines sees sideboard play. This one's actually seen a bit of an uptick with things like Phoenix getting popular and dinging Jeskai control and killing things like Shark Typhoon. Arclight Phoenix, mythic rare staple in one of the better decks in the format right now, contained in these sets. Priest of the Forgotten Gods and Midnight Reaper both see play in the sacrifice decks. Knight of Autumn, just good utility card in most decks playing green and white. Sees play in the Green White Company deck. Spawn of Mayhem, headliner in the black aggressive deck. Hydroid Crisis sees play in ramp decks, pairs very well with Nissa and other ramp cards. Kaya Orzhov Usurper, good utility graveyard hate card that's also a win condition in the right spots. There's also a selection of good answers in this set. Things like Absorb, Assassin's Trophy, Bedevil, removal that, while not always optimal, definitely nice in certain spots, and you'll play some copies of them in a lot of interactive decks that want these cards. Ritual of Soot, in contention for one of the better sweepers in the format. While it doesn't exile like Shadow Critic that we looked at earlier, happening on turn 4 as opposed to turn 5 is a big deal. Runaway Steamkin is in these sets. It pops up in red aggressive decks. And there's also some meme cards in these sets too, like Chance for Glory in the various taking turn decks that we've played on stream at some point. Now, some of you out there are wondering, Jeff, what could possibly be the #1 set to buy if you're getting into Historic? And chat, the answer to that is whichever set has the most cards that you need for the deck you're looking to build. So remember, the Magic Arena economy does not let you buy cards you want directly. You have to open booster packs to get wild cards to craft what you want. And your best chance to get the most cards for the deck that you want to play as quickly as possible is make sure you're buying booster packs for the set that has the most cards that you actually want to open in it, so you don't have to use wild cards for absolutely everything. So, look at the deck list you want to build and go, oh, this set has the most rares from Strix Haven in it. Open Strix Haven packs first. This deck has the most cards in it from even a set that's not on my list. Like, let's say, you want to build a deck that has a bunch of cards from Ixalan in it. Buy Ixalan packs. So to maximize your chances to build your deck that you want to build as quickly as possible, make sure you're opening booster packs that have cards that you want to be crafting, so you're not spending wild cards on absolutely everything. The rest of these sets that I listed here today are good ones to get if you're just looking to fill out your collection, so you can have a wide range of things as your collection grows. But if you're looking to build a specific thing, make sure you buy packs that give yourself the best chance to open the things you actually want to play with. What do you think of my top 5 list here today? Do you think there's a set on Arena that's more beneficial than one of the sets I listed here today? Why do you think it's more beneficial? What staples are in it that have slipped my mind? Let me know in the comments down below. And I'll be back tomorrow on Twitch all day. Historic Anthology 5 releases. Speaking of great ways to grow your Historic collection, Historic Anthology 5 is easily the best value Historic Anthology we've ever had. All the commands are playable. A lot of the Praetors are playable. So if you're someone that's going to be playing a lot of things in Historic, that's definitely worth picking up as well. So see you tomorrow for some sweet brews with those cards. And this Sunday, the 30th, the Hoaglandia Open Series will be returning with myself and Covert Go Blue. So looking forward to casting that all day. Thanks for watching, folks, and see you again real soon.